Hey, welcome to Dad Space. This is Dave. It's a little different music this time around. Yeah, a little different. What are we doing? Well, this is National Podcast Post Month. What does that mean to you? It means to you that you're going to get 30 episodes in 30 days. 30, I know, right? And the idea is that as podcasters, we're going to create episodes in support of National Podcast Post Month. They call it hashtag #NaPodPomo for those at home that are keeping score. But the idea is that we just create content for you daily in the month of November. So we are focusing on some great people that have been past guests on the show and friends of the show, answering questions about dads and giving you some feedback. And then also adding in some of the books that I found and resources I found as a fellow dad that could help you possibly on your journey as a dad. So that's kind of what we're focusing on this month, and I'm excited to share this with you. It's going to be a great month, and today's episode is part of that. I'm excited to share with you a new resource, possibly new to you, and tell you my thoughts about it here on Dad Space. Glad to be with you. The other big part of November, which I'm excited to also bring forward for those that are unaware, is we call it also Movember. What is Movember? It's when the mustache is calling. It is our time as men to unite, to take on mental health, suicide, prostate cancer, testicular cancer, and all of that is to shine a light on men's mental health and men's physical health. And we're celebrating Movember as well. Link in the show notes for you to see how you can support is to raise money and awareness for men. So on top of doing National Podcast Post Month, this month is always focused on you as well as men. We're here to support you and to let you know that there's a community around you that's wishing and searching for the best for you as men. So happy Movember, everyone, as well. Let's get into the podcast. So this one today is a podcast rewind. And what does that mean? That means we're sending you back in the catalog, and maybe you've heard this episode, maybe you haven't, but episode 15, this is episode 141, episode 15 from way back in the day. I had Jim Burns on the show, and he has multiple books, two of which we touched on, one around living with an empty nest, and the other one about how to live and parent your adult children. And fascinating conversation. That's exactly where I am at in my home. Is I have an empty nest, 3 kids out of the house, and I'm parenting and living in this world of having adult children. So it's a completely different world than it was when they were small and we could all fit in one car. We can't all fit in one car anymore. With everyone's partners and all that, we have a big entourage if we ever went out as a group. But the dynamics change as your kids leave the home. For Jen and I, all 3 of our kids left the house around the time of COVID because our employers were asking us to tighten our circle of interaction with other people. So our kids were forced with, hey, we need to kind of tighten stuff up because we have to work. Jen, my wife, and I had to work. So we had to tighten up our circles, and our kids said, well, that's it. I'm out. I'm leaving. And what should take years to kind of work through took weeks for our kids to pack up and go. So COVID was really rough, and we are still reeling. We're like 4 years later, we're still reeling from the vacuum that happened as our kids left the house and went on to their own things. And it's tough because there was no runway for this for Jen and I, and we're still talking about it. We're still working through it. So having Jim on back on episode 15 was great because he really unpacked for us. It was kind of like a counseling session for Dave, having Jim on. Jim works with a lot of people. He comes from a faith background, which is amazing. I'm glad to have him here. But it's not an episode around your faith. It's about an episode around your family. So whether or not you believe in whatever, that's not what it's about. It's about the content. It's about helping you as a dad, helping you to connect with your kids. And especially as you get closer and closer to empty nest syndrome, to prepare yourself for what's ahead. So Jim has some great resources for you. I'll have a link back to episode 15, so you want to go back in time and listen to a younger version of Dave early on in Dad Space podcast history. But I'd love for you to go back and listen to it if you haven't heard that episode. If you're new here, welcome to Dad Space, by the way. Over the last 140 plus episodes, we've really tried to focus in on giving you, as a dad, the tools to be a better dad. So anything I can find that can make your dad journey better, that's why we're here. So again, thank you for being here. So here's a little clip from Jim Burns on Dad Space back at episode 15. Just to give you some context, this is him talking about our relationships and what happens as empty nest and adult children-ness comes into our home. Here's a little bit from Jim.
Well, first of all, I think we should. You answered it, Dave. I think we have to prepare a little bit. What we did with hundreds of people that we talked to and I wrote this book during COVID, so it was on mainly Zoom calls with loads of people, me asking questions, what's going on, is we realized that people hadn't prepared for the empty nest. And so once their kids were gone, they were preparing, getting their kids out of the house, going to college, going to the workforce, whatever, but they were doing that well, a lot of them. But all of a sudden it's quiet and they look up and they go, wow, even in a marriage, we buried some things under the mat. So, wow, gosh, we've got to deal with that. We have to reinvent our life. And I think when you do it, when you're already in the empty nest, it's harder than if you kind of have been thinking about it just a little tiny bit. It's kind of, then you're preparing for it, if you would. But we found a lot of people didn't prepare. And that was a harder thing. And you know what? One of the things that happens is in the midst of all that, and especially if the kids aren't doing well, we have to understand that even for our kids and for our spouse, the big question is, even if they're violating values, do you still love me? And I think sometimes, like with Kathy and I, we actually had to reinvent our marriage relationship. I mean, we had love. We've been married 48 years and we speak on it. I write books on marriage, right? But what we realized was that we had to reinvent our relationship now that our kids were gone, because so much of our relationship was based around our kids, and it got real quiet real quick. And we're like, so what are we going to do? And for us, we had to even rekindle some of the romance. So it's a mouthful to your question, but a lot going on. Yeah.
So reconnecting with your partner, finding your place as an empty nester. Again, it's a very different world. And we talked too, as well around the fact that an empty nest for my wife means something totally different than what empty nest means for myself. I see it as freedom. My wife sees it more as a loss of identity. So understanding how you and your partner respond to empty nest and the reality of it's just the two of you again, it's an interesting moment that I don't think anybody prepared us for, to any degree. And as you get into your kids getting into their 17, 18, 19, going off to college is a small step towards that. None of my kids left for college from our house and went to a school out of our city or province or state. They never left. Everybody was here in the house and then left the house and didn't come back. So we didn't have that in between time where they would come back in the summer or holiday weeks from school. We didn't have any of that. They were here and they were gone. And I'm just telling you and encouraging you as a dad to prepare yourself. You only have, 17, 18 summers? You only have 17, 18 birthdays? And then your kids are going to start getting that pull to go to school, to get into relationships, to go for work, to leave the house, to make their own identity. And in that moment, you're going to realize that time goes by very, very fast. So invest in your kids, invest in your partner. Don't be a stranger with your wife, your husband. Don't let your day-to-day fixation and responsibility to your kids to cloud your relationship, because there will become a day when that all will go away and you're going to be focused on that stranger sitting in the living room with you as you both play on your phones. You need to keep that relationship alive. So go back to listen to episode 15 with Jim Burns. A link in the show notes if you want to go back and listen. Again, thank you for being here. And I just want to encourage you as a dad, you got this. You have this. You have everything you need to be a great dad. You just need to uncover it, develop it, put it into practice. And that's what Dad Space is all about. Thank you for listening to the show. Happy Movember. This is Dad Space. I'm glad you're here. Happy November to you. Happy Movember. And I would love for you to share this with another dad. This podcast, this Movember, this month where we focus on dads, this is the focus on you. And we are in your corner. If you've ever felt like you're alone, if you've ever felt like you're doing this on your own and there's no one there to help you and support you, then let Dad Space be that for you this Movember. We need to stick together. We need to be there to support each other and build each other up as men. And this was an entire month focused on us being Movember. So happy Movember, everyone. Understand that you're loved, cared for, and needed in this world. And there's no one else that can be the father that you can be. There's no one else who can be the man that you can be. And we need you. Happy Movember. Thanks for listening to Dad Space. I look forward to having you back for the next daily episode here in the month of November as we celebrate Movember and National Podcast Post Month. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being a great dad. And thanks for sharing the show. Happy Movember, everybody.
It's time to rethink men's health. Because it doesn't just affect men, it affects us all. When men are well, the benefits ripple through families and communities. But when men are unwell and unsupported, we all feel it. We're all the real face of men's health. Be part of the solution with Movember.